Heather.
Hi,
Thank
Jason.
you for having me on your show.
Oh, yes, it is such an honor and a privilege. How's the day been so far?
It's been good. I've been enjoying having a good time here in Raleigh, and I don't think I've been here before, and I'm really amazed at just what a cool town we're in. Just there's so much to do that's walkable here, and of course everybody's been super friendly. And the food was good, so that's the most important thing.
The food, right?
Yes,
because from what I've seen, you're a barbecue guy. Is this the thing?
Yes, barbecue, and of course we know Beerus loves to eat, so that's always an important consideration. So,
Where? Redneck Barbecue.
is that a place? Oh. I don't need the upscale stuff. Give me the gas station tacos every time,
Yeah.
I love it. What is it? Is it pork? Is pork? I understand there's a certain kind of geographical divide. Right. Okay. In some places, if you connect beef to barbecue, they look at you like you're crazy.
Right,
But
I know.
in Texas, anything you barbecue is barbecue. So.
Right. Fair enough. See, now this is just going to talk about food for the next hour, which...
Why not?
I was going to say, like, a lot of the times when you come to these conventions, do you ever have the opportunity to actually explore the cities? Because usually they keep you pretty busy.
Yeah, it just varies. I mean, sometimes if I get there early enough, I try to spend, like, the first night kind of checking the town out, or a Saturday night, actually, if we get done early enough. And I love towns like Raleigh that are kind of, some people call them like a middle market, it's like not a big city, but there's enough culture and people that like, good food and so a lot of times, and usually if there's like a college, it's helpful if it's kind of a college town or if you're in a college area. So you get a nice, there's nightlife, there's stuff to do, there's food, and it's, but you don't have the trappings of LA or New York. So, nothing wrong with those towns, but, I like to be in a place where people are friendly and they can tell you to go to Redneck Barbecue.
Yeah, there you go.
You know.
Amazing. So besides the food, what are some of your favorite things about getting to come to these amazing conventions? Specifically, this is the inaugural Animate right here in Raleigh. So.
Oh, that's amazing. Hey, and we are all a part of it.
Yes.
What do you know about that? I think meeting the fans is always amazing because, honestly, it sort of completes the circle. You create something for, performance. If you're doing a play, there's an audience right there in the room for you, and they clap, they laugh, they groan, whatever, and then a lot of times after the show, they'll even stick around and say hello. So, you go from performance or even rehearsal to performance, and there's just this cathartic thing that happens, and then the audience, and then you're done, and you can walk away from it. But with media, you don't always meet your audience, and you put something out in the world, and you hope people enjoy it. So this is a fun way for us to kind of meet you guys and hear the feedback, and it really means a lot when you guys are able to come up and talk about stuff that we've done, or say, that show or that character was so meaningful to me, or someone today was just talking to me about how their anime club in college were big fans of this old show that I did called Louis the Rune Soldier, like years ago, and so that was very cool to get that feedback.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what was your introduction to this wonderful world of all things anime?
Well, I just set out to be an actor. I was a stage actor out of Houston, from like the early to mid 90s going forward. And then around 1998, there was a small little mom and pop company in Houston. I say mom and pop, but it was more like two geeky dudes that loved anime, and they started a company that some of you may have heard of called ADV Films, and they had a lot of Evangelion, Bubblegum Crisis, Gasaraki. They had a lot of early anime titles that sort of became like early classics, and so I got kind of roped into just doing anime as a side gig. I was also pursuing film and television work and doing a lot of theater. And honestly, it was just a side gig. We didn't really have the audience that we have now. And so we were all just like, who's watching this? I don't know, but somebody was buying it. And so that's how I got started in anime. And then I started getting into film and television. So that took me out of theater, which is really where my first passion was. But I was still able to do anime. I can't say that I was trying to pursue it, but they were still calling me. And before I knew it, like really before I knew it, the anime stuff really kind of became, just suddenly there was this inflation of fandom. And I have to think that at least a big part of it came from like early Cartoon Network or whatever doing like Dragon Ball, like having, there were kids that were exposed to anime as it just started to be like a cheap, available kind of content that all these cable networks could put on at odd hours. And people saw it. And then like, the college anime clubs started happening and we started having conventions. Of course, the Star Trek crew was doing conventions like this, since the 70s. But sometime in the mid 90s or so, maybe late 90s, you had the start of big conventions like Anime Weekend Atlanta, and I don't know how long SAC Anime's been going on, but you started to have, anime conventions starting to happen. And that was kind of simultaneous with, other comic book conventions that were going on. And so, this all just kind of happened. And in the meantime, I'm still going out for auditions. I'm still doing film and television auditions, and I'm not really thinking about anime. And then something interesting happened. I relocated to the Dallas area, so I'd started doing a lot more work with Funimation, now known as Crunchyroll. And I was doing stuff with them for a few years, and then that turned into doing Dragon Ball. So by the time I started doing Dragon Ball, I had been already doing anime for almost 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
But Beerus sort of, I think, introduced my work to a new audience. So.
Absolutely. What a cool journey. I love the fact that you kind of like do it all. You do stage, live action, you're in a booth recording.
Sure.
Where does the crossover lie? Like, what kind of like mentality or headspace do you have to do for each of these things?
Yeah, it's just whatever. I mean, it's whatever I wake up on the day and what's on the calendar that day. So if I'm doing an on-camera shoot somewhere, then that's what occupies my mind. Luckily, I've been doing anime long enough and doing voiceover work. I don't want to say I could do it in my sleep, but it really is second nature to me. I don't get nervous about it. I mean, I always feel confident that I can show up and do exactly what's being asked of me. Film and television is a little different. I mean, there's just so many variables at play. First of all, because it's you on camera. And you go through wardrobe, you go through hair and makeup, you've got your lines, there are, it's just it's so intense, and it's fantastic if it's a well-written script and it's people that you like to work with. But there's so much in terms of just like, on-set chemistry and how you feel that day, or do you feel connected to the character? And I don't know, voice work gives you the opportunity to kind of trim away a lot of the stuff that can kind of distract you as an actor and just have fun and play. You're at your best when you're doing, if you're a voice actor, I think you're at your best when you feel free to use your imagination and you feel comfortable and like you can feel like I can do anything, and it's not, you're not necessarily under the clock to get a good take in because you're going to lose your light in 45 minutes. So it really is a very different thing. And stage, I don't do much anymore just because of the time that it takes, from everything else. But at least with stage, you have a month generally, or 3 weeks to rehearse, and I find that incredibly rewarding. So, but my thing is, I always felt like I have to do everything because I don't know if any one thing is going to be there for me. So if I just do everything and diversify my income, so to speak, then I'll be able to make a living. So
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah. So why not do it all?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about like entering the Dragon Ball universe? Like, what did you know about the character, and what was the audition process like for it?
Yeah, well, we knew nothing about Beerus because he kind of came up as a brand new character that was introduced as part of, I want to say, and some of you will correct me, I think it was the Xenoverse was our debut of Beerus. And at that time, we didn't know much about him. He just showed up. And so it was this character that we did. And I'm not sure, if you listen to my voice work on that, I'm not sure how much it's actually similar to what I did later, because it was actually, of course, Battle of the Gods, which is when Beerus was kind of introduced formally, I think, to Dragon Ball fandom, along with Whis and this other, this whole idea of multiverse, characters. And so I had been doing some work with Chris Sabbatt's Okratron Studios in Dallas, and the thing that I had done just prior to that was Borderlands, when I did Krieg, the Psycho, for Borderlands 2 video game. And so I think it was almost like while I was there that they were like, oh yeah, we've got this other thing we'd like you to take a look at. And so one thing led to another, and I was doing the trailer for Battle of Gods, and then the movie Battle of Gods, and that movie was wildly successful. I mean, beyond anybody's expectation. So that movie really, I think, is responsible for relaunching the whole Dragon Ball franchise in the way that we have it now. So I'm grateful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get to questions from the crowd, let's see, how do I want to ask this? Obviously, you're on The Walking Dead, but I wanted to know, which of your anime characters would you want to team up with in a zombie apocalypse?
Ooh, in a zombie apocalypse. That's a good question. I think I almost feel like Gildarts from Fairy Tale. He's such an overpowered character, but he's so much fun to he seems like he'd be a lot of fun to have a beer with, frankly, and hang out with. And honestly, he could just do all the work. Like if he was on your team, he's got, it's tempting to say, for me, to say Beerus as the answer to everything, but that's too much. I mean, that's overkill, right? That's like, shooting a bazooka at a sitting, it's too much. But even Gildarts is probably too overpowered, but I think he would bring some humor to the situation. So.
Cool. And what would be your weapon of choice in the apocalypse? Weapon
of choice. It's funny. I always thought it would be cool if I'm thinking about Tobin. I always hoped that I always think it'd be cool if they did a little storyline where Rick is walking by and he hears some pa pa pa, slap pound, in a barn or something, and he walks in, and it turns out Tobin was an amateur boxer, and he's just kind of punching the punching bag or something just to work off steam, and then at some point somebody makes him an iron fist, and so then that becomes his thing, is that he just kind of punches through zombie heads.
I love it. That
sounds
cool. So fun.
Right, it'd probably work better for a video game, honestly, but yeah, that would be my sort of creative answer.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Great answer. All right, if you guys want to start lining up for whatever questions you guys may have, or we can call on you if you don't want to go to the microphone. I know it's a little, it's up to y'all. Anybody?
You can
questions?
Just yell if you want.
Project. Anybody?
Yeah.
Anything.
Any questions?
Anything you want to know.
It turns out everybody's just here because they're tired. They were out on the floor and they're exhausted. They're like, this seems like a quiet room if I just hang out. The lighting is sort of dim. Line just to see what does the original Japanese actor sound like, what does the manga say about this character, and so kind of what I turned in was kind of, me really kind of trying to make a statement, like, I need to play this character. But that's it. I just turned it in like everybody else, and I had no idea. And then I got notified, hey, we're booking you for time for this character. I was like, yes. So, yeah, thanks. I like I said, it's funny because I love characters like Beerus or Gildarts that have like a high ceiling of kind of emotion, or you can play them for comedy and they're powerful, but it's also fun for me to play like the low-key grizzled detective, or the very intense, even though there's not a ton of like I said, emotional, but it's just a cool character. And a lot of the one-liners and the kinds of things he says, it's almost like cinematic, which is the other thing I love about a character like Kishibe. And you can imagine somebody just like, stone cold, just, and on camera it would be super intense. You could just get them saying the words. And you have the show allows you to do that so much in anime, as you know, and even in Chainsaw Man, characters are just like emotionally flying all over the place. So it's nice to have, at the same time on screen, a character that's just right here. He's telling you how it's gonna be. And they do a really good job of creating that animation, and then you just fill it in, so.
Are there any particular vocal warm-ups or rituals that you do before you record?
Sometimes in the car, if it's early in the day, and I prefer to record early in the day, but if I'm traveling to the studio, I think I'm just subconsciously just like, just kind of, I learned a lot of vocal warm-ups in college and for theater, and sometimes I'll do those things if I feel like I need to, but yeah, I don't do a ton of that anymore, just because I don't want to blow my voice out, before I get to the studio. So
That's fair.
yeah, but it's a lot of times there's blown takes because it's like, I've still got something in there, So
Which of your characters is the most vocally taxing?
oh well, that's easy actually, and that would be Krieg the Psycho from Borderlands 2. And Krieg is, I got the shiniest meat bicycle all the time. Every line is like that. And, so when I'm doing Krieg, it's like, yep, I can taste blood when I'm done with the session.
Yum.
Yeah. And there's nothing else I can do that day, obviously. And hopefully I can work the next day. I also do Krieg is a character that he's psycho, but in his mind is the sane person that he used to be, who is constantly monologuing with him and so those are easy to do. I just kind of barely whisper into the microphone. He's like, if you kill an innocent person, I will destroy us. So I always knock those out first, because the Krieg stuff is intense. So, Borderlands movie coming up sometime this year. I'm interested to see it. Yeah.
I was also gonna say, when it comes to playing I'll just call it a good guy versus a villainous character, is there a different approach that you take for that, or is it you look at, even though that they're a villain?
Yeah, it's a challenge because you don't want to overplay the evil part of it, but sometimes it's just obvious, it's right there. And when you're doing anime, it's almost in the animation, like how what have they drawn? What do you see on screen? That kind of dictates a lot of what your performance is going to be. But I don't know. Either way, I'm just interested in characters that are well written. And when we met Beerus, I think is a great example of a character that would you consider him? Not now, but then, would you have considered him kind of like an evil foe? You might have thought so. I mean, he's a destructive force. He's going to blow up the planet. And he's treated like, he's certainly treated like an enemy. But I didn't want to play him that way. I mean, I just wanted to play him as kind of self-interested, and, he's got his own life history going on. He's got this whole realm this whole universe of things happening with Whis and with all the other, destroyer gods, etc. So it's really just a thing about playing the truth of the character, and we interpret actions as being evil actions or good actions, but you could certainly have, what seems to me a good person character doing a lot of evil things. So
that's fair.
yeah.
Okay, so to pivot a little bit, just walking around and even in the room right now, and maybe people that you've met at your booth, obviously there's a lot of incredible cosplays. So let's say you were to go to a convention and you could cosplay.
Oh.
Who would you want to be?
Gosh. I love the look of Roy Batty from Blade Runner. I think that would be fun, and I don't see a lot of Blade Runner cosplay, actually.
I don't think so.
Even Rick Deckard's character. I really feel like people should cosplay the Blade Runner movies more.
Okay.
I mean, the style was so distinctive, and especially if you had, if you had a Rick and a Roy and a Pris and Jay, what's his name? I think that would be really, really cool. And then you could do if you were doing a contest, you could do a little cosplay on stage as those characters. And the Roy Batty could do the classic, "I've seen things you people wouldn't believe." Yeah, it'd be great.
I look forward to this.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe I'll do it now. You've inspired me.
I really think you should. Any questions? Come on, guys. Whatever you want. Now is your chance.
Questions, comments, protests.
Ooh, let's not protest too much.
Yes.
Some of your favorite anime that you're in and some that you're not.
Favorites that I'm in. My reflex on that question is to go back to some of the early stuff and talk about Louis the Rune Soldier, which is he's kind of a dysfunctional wizard who is picked up by an all-girls band of adventurers, but they need a wizard. But he just likes to sit in the pub and drink a lot. And when push comes to shove, he forgets how to do magic, and he just does this thing called Louis Punch, which is this punch that is super destructive. And so it's effective, but he's a knucklehead, and they force him to carry all their. It's played for comedy. And that was a ton of fun to do. There's another show that I always talk about called Wandaba Style. And these are out there. You can find them streaming. They're just not, they may not be on Crunchyroll. They might be on High Dive or what's the other big one? There's a couple, but Wandaba Style. I played a character who was the manager of an all-girls Japanese pop group, and he's really sleazy, and he's trying to get them to do a gig on the moon because he thinks that'll rocket him to stardom as a super manager. It's ridiculous, and it's as ridiculous as it sounds. So there were a lot of fun shows from the late 90s, early 2000s that we did that I still think hold up well, if you can find them. But certainly recently, Beerus is always fun to do. I always have fun with Aokiji from One Piece, certainly Gildarts from Fairy Tail, Diggin' Chainsaw Man. So, a lot of these shows, I think the common thread on the shows that I really like are the ones that are also really well written. Another one I can think of like that is Psycho-Pass, which is a great kind of like sci-fi, kind of like a Philip K. Dick style sci-fi if you don't know the show. So it's really good. Find it.
And I think you also asked shows that you're not part of that you enjoy. So, which ones aren't you part of?
Yeah, I don't really have anime envy, man. I don't know. What would I like to be a part of? Yeah, technically, I'm in My Hero for 5 minutes. As fourth kind. I think it would have been fun to do something a little more substantial on that show, but I don't sit around thinking about it. So. Yeah.
Is there another hand up? Yeah, go right ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, what's your favorite thing about voicing Beerus?
Well, I love, again, I love how well written the character is, and I think the character, I think Akira Toriyama loves the character. And so I think it's just it's really well conceived as an element of the show in order to relaunch Dragon Ball. And I like how he is perceived as being very powerful, and I get to play that power, but he's also got this soft side, or this kind of curmudgeonly, funny side that is a lot of fun to play. And so it's really a gift, I think, for an actor to get an anime role like that. So that's, I guess I love the character. To me, it's as distinctive a character in anime as you can find. So that's really cool.
I agree.
Thanks, yeah. There's not a lot of characters like Beerus. I mean, honestly, I think, you know, I don't get to take credit for that, but I get to ride the creativity behind, you know, the writers and Toriyama just kind of conceiving of the character. And so, you know, I get to put my interpretation and my spin on the performance, which is really cool. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Who's next? Okay, so I wanted to ask about how has the industry evolved? Obviously, like you said, you've been, you know, you've had the ability to voice act for such a long time now.
Yep.
What would you say, like, how have things changed since you started? Maybe challenges and opportunities?
Well, when we started, nobody cared about anime voice actors. I mean, just to be honest about it. I mean, I don't mean to, you know, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus or expressing any kind of negativity. I just mean literally, we were the low man on the totem pole. We were the last kind of piece of the puzzle in terms of getting an anime title out. You just did an English dub because you could, and why not? And it was assumed that a lot of people would just watch the subs anyway, but it was like, well, we could just do a dub, and that would be fun. And then, you know, but even then, I remember thinking, these dubs that we're putting out are pretty good. Like, I'm watching it and I'm thinking, well, obviously, because a lot of my colleagues and myself, we came out of the theater. We having done a lot of theater, and including a lot of children's theater, by the way, which is kind of it's not something some actors think about, but you really learn to play and use your imagination in those settings. So ADV was putting out, I think, really high quality dubs starting in like roughly the late 90s and early aughts, but we were still just kind of local actors that were being hired, and we just thought of it as kind of gig work. You know, you know, it was sort of slightly better money than we would make waiting tables, probably equivalent to what we would have made bartending. You know, and the kind of work that you put into for this. So it was kind of like, this is a decent little side gig for someone who's pursuing other kinds of acting. And there weren't many of us. And if you listen to those early dubs, it almost feels like there's a company of actors, because you hear a lot of the same actors in the different dubs. And even within the same dub, you would get called in, and I would maybe do the main character, but then I would also be doing like shopkeeper number 4 or radio announcer number 2. You know, you're doing a lot of other, and you're doing the Walla. So it's like, oh yeah, also we've got to do some Walla sessions. So that was all built in. You know, you would work on a show and you would do a main character, but then you were also 2 or 3, you were in 2 or 3 other places in that show. And the other thing is our audience was smaller, and we didn't, you know, it was still a gig that you would do as an actor pursuing other things. Now it's very different. The audience has inflated. There are a lot of people that are wanting to do what we do. But on the other hand, voice actors are getting more respect than they did. We're not just some random no-name actor that happens to be on a dub. People are interested in kind of what we do, and they put it together. Oh, you're in this, and you're the guy that played this, and I hear this a lot. I can't believe that you play Beerus, and you're also this guy, and you've been in that, and you've done this, and those are all completely different characters. So, you know, that's what makes it fun. So, but it was different back then. I don't think people were really putting together the idea that, you know, we were like interesting from a, you know, from a fandom standpoint, you know.
And look at it now.
Look at it now. It's
This
crazy.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So not only have you voiced some really interesting looking characters, but you've also got to personify in real life some awesome characters too. So I wanted to ask about wearing prosthetics, specifically for Satan
Yeah.
on Preacher.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about wearing the prosthetics, emoting in the prosthetics, and just your journey?
So if you don't know, she's talking about a show called Preacher on AMC. It was Garth Ennis's terrific adaptation of his comic book. And I played Satan, who is a character from the comic book.
Yeah. Woo.
And it really is, I mean, it's, all the characters in the show are definitely comic book versions of, the counterparts. But I was in full prosthetics from like basically my knees to my horns. And we did a full body cast. They created the character build out of all of me and my face, but enhanced everything. So I'm not as jacked as I was in the show. But it was, a crazy experience. So I went to K&B Studios, which is outside of LA. This is the same studio this is the studio founded by Greg Nicotero and colleagues.
I love him.
Yeah, they do, they're the kind of studio of record that does all the music or makeup effects for The Walking Dead and look them up. The Predator. I mean, they've done all the biggest stuff. They do prosthetics. And so, I had to do a fitting for that, hours and hours of building on top of me. And then on the day, they basically kind of fit you into the costume, and then they have to almost like glue on all of the pieces. And if you're interested, come by the table. I've got pictures I can show you. So you're under all of this, and then you have to act. Which is interesting because it definitely mutes what you can do. So you kind of have to be a little more, at least for the character, you have to move things a little more than you would if it was just your face on camera. It's a funny thing though, when I auditioned for that, they weren't sure what they were going to do if they were going to do, the audition was just me on camera, and it was just almost like, hey, he's probably just like maybe a sleazy businessman. That was kind of the vibe that I got, like a sleazy car salesman. And so anyway, I took that into the audition and even into the performance, and I think
It's so cool.
I think they felt like it worked.
It's so great. For sure, go to this table and check out like the photo.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So we have a couple minutes left. Were there any questions, or can I go off the rails a little bit? Yeah, go ahead. Come on down. What's your name? What's your question?
My name's Leon. First name Brian.
up?
So, in the future of Dragon Ball, what do you want to happen to Lord Beerus? Like character development or like potential deaths, if we want to go that far?
Yeah. Obvious disclaimer, I have no input on the outcome of Beerus or any of the characters. But I think it would be very cool to see Beerus somehow weakened, either by virtue of usurpation or, either maybe retirement or, Vegeta finds out, about, what Beerus's involvement in his dad's demise and all this kind of stuff. Maybe there's some vicious kind of, I think it'd be fun to see Beerus be really challenged and have to kind of find himself again and kind of fight back to either regain his title or, something like that. I just think that would be a cool arc to see Beerus really, really challenged.
Would you want Vegeta to be the successor?
It's funny, I don't know. I like Vegeta, like just personally. Vegeta's probably my favorite of all the main characters on the show. I don't know why, because he's a bit of a curmudgeon and he's surly, which I think is like me sometimes, I don't know, I just see to me, he's the everyman of the show. Like, isn't he? Like, when you're not identifying with Goku, I don't think. I think you're identifying with Vegeta if you're watching the show, because he's the one that, like, calls out all the bull, you know what I'm saying?
Stuff.
Like, he's the nonsense, right? Like, I don't know. For me, like, when I'm watching the show, I'm like, Right on, Vegeta. I know exactly what you're thinking right now. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think we've heard a lot of things about, one or both of these guys training to be the successor, whatever that means. I kind of leave it open. So my answer to questions like that typically causes me to think, well, what would be the most interesting thing to watch as a fan? If you're a fan of the show, then you're probably a fan of the character. You've seen his highs, you've seen his kind of silliness, his laziness, his kind of moodiness. You've seen him get silly over food. But if you remember Battle of the Gods, you remember how intense he is in battle. You've also seen him very cocksure of himself in other situations throughout the show in ways that you think, that's pretty cool, man. That's like Clint Eastwood, or whatever. But it would be interesting to see him fall from his perch a little bit and have to claw his way back.
I was going to say, you mentioned retirement. What do you think he goes to, like Boca Raton? Like, what's he doing in retirement?
I know. Actually, I think you're right. I think if Beerus were to just retire, to comically retire, I think you'd find, the funny thing, he'd probably be like a cruiser. He'd come to the Earth and be like a cruise, guy, just hanging out at the buffet,
These new 3-year cruises.
Yeah, exactly.
Smart.
Yeah.
So smart.
Yeah.
Great question.
Alrighty.
Oh yeah, I love that. So before we do wrap it up, again, so we already talked about barbecue. I know you're also a baseball enthusiast. I want to know who's your ride or die team, and I want to know if you also follow the Banana League.
Oh, I know about the Savannah Bananas.
Yeah, is
yeah.
it the
I can't say I follow them, but yeah, I mean, I
Banana
think
fans
they're,
in the house? They're so fun, right?
Yeah, in fact, I think they're touring. They're now I think they're the baseball equivalent of the Harlem Globetrotters, right?
Yes,
They really
they're
have
so
carved out a
fun.
niche for themselves. And the fact that you're sitting here talking about them, I mean, they've done something right. I mean, people know about them that don't even follow. And I actually, I have a ton of respect because my son plays baseball, and so I know some of these guys that are coaches and a lot of guys that were in the pros or they were trying to work their way up. They played in the minor leagues. It's really a hard life. I mean, it's a hard life trying to make it to the bigs. And but this team has found out a way to reawaken, I think, people's love for baseball, but also have fun with it, and also give those guys jobs. I mean, it's super cool. I grew up in Houston, so of course I follow the Houston Astros. Sorry if anybody's a hater, I don't care. Go Stros. But I like baseball. I love and respect baseball as a sport. I can watch any baseball team anywhere. Except maybe the Oakland Athletics, but
Oh wow! Okay.
hey, listen, even Bay Area fans hate the Athletics. So, in fact, I've heard that they'd rather go see the Bees, which is like a AA or a AAA affiliate. But yeah, I have a bucket list goal of doing the whole ballpark thing where you travel around and you go to all 30 ballparks.
I love it.
Yeah.
I feel like you should do that in conjunction with conventions too.
Well, yeah, I've thought about that for
Yeah.
sure. And what it turns out is a lot of times that I'm in cities and I'll check during baseball season, and it just seems like inevitably the team is out of town that weekend.
Of course.
They're
That's
somewhere
why
else. Yeah.
It always works.
So, but yeah, I want to start doing that.
It's amazing. I feel like we covered a lot here today.
I feel like we really know each other.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking
sure.
the time to hang out with us. Any thoughts you want to leave us with here?
Thanks for being so cool here in Raleigh. I'm definitely coming back to this town. This is a super cool place. Y'all are blessed to live here. Yeah, love it. I mean, I guess, I'm sure you could all tell me something you hate about it, but when I come into a city, I don't look for the negativity. I like to look and see what are the cool things, and just walking around downtown, I like the vibe. So yeah, thanks for, I'm still up on the floor. I'm gonna go up there now. If you want to come by and say hello, and I'll be here all weekend. And so yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Redneck Barbecue, right? That's the place. All right, cool.
Yeah. Where is that, by the way? How far is that from here?
40 minutes.
Oh, okay. That's the bougie one, right? The new one. Okay. All right. Cool.
Yay, one more
Thanks.
time, everybody, for Jason Douglas.